So most of us had some kind of childhood trauma. In some philosophies or perspectives around trauma, they talk about small t trauma or big T trauma. And small t trauma, most of us have some element of that is unresolved in our childhood. And it could be as simple as not having your diaper changed when you were 2 years old fast enough. And then you end up having some discomfort that doesn't make any sense to you. It could be as simple as failing a test and having a teacher reprimand you in school. So I just want you to think about, there's a whole range when we're talking about childhood trauma. Okay? So we start with a definition, exactly what is childhood trauma. And this comes from the American National Institute of Mental Health. The experience of an event by a child that is emotionally painful or distressful, which often results in lasting mental and physical effects. Well, we're going to dive deeper into that. And Bessel van der Kolk, who is a leader in the world of trauma and understanding trauma, wrote a groundbreaking book a number of years ago. It is translated into dozens and dozens of languages. The Body Keeps the Score. Said, trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It is the current imprint of that pain, horror, and fear living inside people. So disruptive childhood events are what we call the event that ended up with lasting trauma. So remember, trauma, when we're living with trauma, it is a disruptive event or a distress or stress event that did not get calmed or resolved when we were a child. There wasn't an adult present in that moment that effectively helped co-regulate and help us come to calm and resolution around whatever happened. And here we have Oprah Winfrey from a book she wrote with Dr. Bruce Perry, where she asks lots of questions of Dr. Bruce Perry, and he answers. It's actually quite a brilliant book because you get an insight of one person's childhood trauma, and Oprah Winfrey had quite a bit of it, and she's become a leader in the United States around laws to protect children from abuse. And of course, abuse, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, sexual, are high reasons or high experiences for living with trauma. Again, all of those events of abuse may happen, but if some adult intervenes and is able to bring to calm, that person may become an adult and not be carrying the distress. So in her discussion in the book, she says, your past is not an excuse, but it is an explanation, offering insight into the questions so many of us ask ourselves. Why do I behave the way I behave? Why do I feel the way I feel? And I certainly relate to this because I loved children. I was an early childhood educator. My husband and I adopted a little girl, and then I would get furiously angry, and I ended up smacking, particularly the oldest one. I would ask myself, what's going on? And my own childhood physical, emotional, and verbal abuse was bubbling up. And I needed to deal with my childhood trauma. So risk factors include this. Notice, did your mother have maternal depression? 25% of women who give birth end up feeling postpartum depression. And when you are in depression, you are disconnected and you're not really present to caregiving. So that's a question to ask yourself. Did you experience physical, emotional, or sexual abuse when you were a child? And the people that say, oh, The spanking I got from my parents did me good. The research absolutely contradicts that 100%. Nobody is allowed to spank anybody in a prison, right? It's called assault. Physical and emotional neglect. Did you not get adequate food, shelter, support, a decent bed to sleep in? Domestic violence, was that happening in the home when two adults that are supposed to be caregivers are engaged in basic war? They're taking away any sense of emotional safety. Divorce. Now, this can be sometimes creating safety, and oftentimes it can create a sense of abandonment for a child. Mental illness. Again, people dealing with mental illness, they are disconnected from themselves and functioning in the world, and disconnected from their loved ones. And children need to know that someone is present, an adult with an adult brain that makes decisions and keeps them safe. Substance abuse, same thing, creates disconnection. Incarceration of a caregiver, that's pretty clear. Hospitalization, again, the parent is missing. Poverty makes it very, very challenging. It's just a huge distress and minimizes the resources and support available, and often parents end up in such a distress that, again, they're not really present to the children's needs. Discrimination may kick in. That can happen around racism or other kinds of discrimination. Poor community resources. There's not a teacher or a boys and girls club or a big brother or a big sister to fill in the gaps for a child's needs. And homelessness, of course, has many aspects of missing out on needs. And maybe there were little opportunities in your community for support. So these have all been researched. They're called risk factors. And now I want to move into protective factors. So there are protective factors that we grow up with that can protect us from the ingesting and holding on to the distress of events that happen to in childhood. Again, I want you to pay attention to what existed when you were growing up as a child. Are you unconditionally loved by somebody? This creates a sense of safety, which is key to trauma. Did you have caring extended family? For many people, a grandparent's home or a grandmother was that place of safety where the shaking could happen, to let go of the distressful event and to be told, I love you, you're here now, you're okay. Basic needs met, food, shelter, clothing. Clear rules, routines, boundaries for structure. There is a sense of safety when people say yes to what's safe. An adult says to a child, no, that's not safe. No, that's not good for you. And it's programming some discipline into the child's mind. So no's and yeses are very important. Although I used to teach how to say yes instead of no by saying, after your chores are done, you may, or after you save up the money, you may buy a Cadillac, so that you never needed to say that harsh word no, but it was always after. It's a great little rule. So guidance and consistency. Was there consistency in the home, or were there periodically these surprises? My father had a huge anger management issue, and you wouldn't have a clue what you had done wrong for him to blast out and maybe hit or call you a name. Or for me, he used to say, you stupid girl, you stupid girl. That went into my brain and created emotional trauma for me. Opportunities to contribute at home and appreciation for contribution. Thank you. My mother, as I did have some protective factors, my mother used to say, thank you for the improvement. You just did good enough. It never had to be perfect. And friendships. Did you have friendships where you felt totally comfortable being who you are with your emotions and your dreams? Inspiring role models. I had a teacher, Dr. Drew, Wayland Drew, in high school, was a role model for me. I had never seen a man cry, and he used to read poetry to us from the English text that we were studying, and he would weep. And I just fell in love with this teacher, and he provided a whole different role model for me. The role model was so powerful that I ended up marrying a man that had a sense of gentleness, the same as Wayland Drew. Opportunities to contribute in the community. Oftentimes our self-esteem and self-worth is elevated in the community by opportunities to volunteer or take classes or be in a sports team where we're acknowledged. For many children, their trauma is not being seen or heard. Check off for you protection factors that you have in your life. This is a really good list. And now I want you to pay attention to which of these protective factors you don't have in your life now. And I want you to consider, my wish for you is that you seek out fulfilling these now. Really, the key to healing childhood trauma is to start to give yourself what you didn't get when you were growing up, as if you become your own best parent, your own best wise, healed parent. Just take a look at this list once more and ask yourself, what can I do to increase protective factors in my life?